Everyone, I just want to thank you for your patience. We'll be starting in a few minutes. We're waiting for everybody to use the restroom. So thank you for your patience with us this evening. The regular meeting of the Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors for June 14th, 2023 is called to order. Lisa, please call the roll.
Ms. Buckner.
Here.
Ms. Cortez, Ms. Curls.
Yes.
Ms. Ford.
Here.
Mr. Jackaway.
Here.
Ms. Kendricks.
Here.
And Ms. Cortez.
Here, thank you. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda for this evening? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Lisa, please call the roll.
Ms. Buckner.
Yes.
Ms. Curls.
Yes.
Ms. Ford.
Yes.
Mr. Jackaway.
Yes.
Ms. Kendricks.
Yes.
Ms. Cortez.
Yes, the agenda is approved. Lisa, what are the outstanding action items?
At this point, we do not have any. I believe they were addressed at the last board meeting.
With that, Dr. Collier, the floor is yours.
Okay, I think we're ready to move into our recognitions. This is one of the most enjoyable times that we have where we get to celebrate the awesome things that our students and our staff members are doing. And so we take some time periodically, at least quarterly, to recognize some of the folks in our system. So we're going to start with our Scholar Superstars, then we'll move to our terrific teammates, and then our outstanding administrators, and then finally we will have a special recognition for this evening. So Mr. Jonathan Solomon will lead us through our recognitions at this time.
All right, good afternoon, members of the board. We're going to start. We have a few of our awesome people that will be receiving today these awards. I'm going to ask Dr. Collier and the board chair, Rita Cortez, to come up here to the front so you can present these certificates. They are in order. And then we'll take some pictures. We'll start with Scholar Superstars. We have a pre-K student going into kindergarten, and her name is Amari Cook. Amari is full of knowledge and has unbelievable comprehension. Amari gives their very best and is curious, and she's here, and she's a little bit nervous. Amari asks questions and goes the step further. Amari may only be 5 years old, but this student is a true superstar in academics. So let's give it up for Amari. You can go. She was nervous as soon as she walked into this room, but she'll get really happy later when she sees the pictures. Our next student, Scholar Superstar, we're going to let you guys take some pictures while we read the next one. It's a 6th grader from Whittier Elementary, Jasmine Ali. Is an exceptional student who gives 110% to everything she sets her mind on. She's a genuine friend and ally, helping any student who doesn't feel they belong or are welcome. She can work with anyone and everyone and is often support system to other students who are struggling. She's an advocate for herself and all Muslim students, ensuring that they are allowed equal say in events. As part of the Sustainability Club, she rose above each occasion and helped spread and be part of the very first annual Earth Day extravaganza. She's not here today, but let's give it up for Yasmin Ali. Our next student is here today, and now we're going to a senior that just graduated. She has a strong interest in accounting. She has shown from her freshman year all the way to her senior year a great superation and improvement in all of the areas. She ran and won the treasurer position for the senior class of 2023. Giselle has really stepped out of her comfort zone. She participated in a Shark Tank competition and led her team through a tough question and answer session. As part of the accounting team, she has participated in advertising campaign for the Kansas City Museum of History, and her pitch was picked by the Kansas City Museum of History. So let's give it up for Giselle Romero. Now we're going to move to our terrific teammates. This is to recognize those members of the KCPS staff team that are doing great things, and we normally try to recognize someone that is certified and also someone that is classified. Let's start with someone that we know very much here in the BOE or in the Board of Education. It's said of this person, I'm going to save the name till the end. How about that? I'm going to try. It's said of this person to be about the nicest person I've ever met in KCPS. He has a can-do attitude and always strives for the best customer service. He keeps the BOE sparkling clean, whether it's in front glass, the restrooms, the board, the Westport room. After meetings or gatherings, he ensures those spaces are spick and span. He routinely gives beyond the extra mile customer service with a smile every day. He's the best. Let's give it up for Jack Mike. Yeah. Congratulations. Congratulations. Jack Mike is a custodian here in the Central Building, and he truly is an admirable person, and he's always doing the best for KCPS. All right, our next terrific teammate is a counselor at Trust Elementary. I'm going to try to save the name for the end so we can give a big round of applause. She knows her job, and she goes above and beyond for staff, students, and families. During the transition at Trust, She reached out to all of our families to make sure that students were getting enrolled and parents understood their options. She did home visits when families couldn't make it to the meetings. She made sure that all of our families knew about and had access to various resources. She knew all of our kids and many other parents when we lost positions. Like our secretary, she stood in the gap, made sure everything was covered. She maintained the small groups, counseling lessons, no matter the obstacle. Miss Polk was there to make sure everyone was taken care of. Let's give it up for Miss Kelsey Polk, counselor at Trust Elementary. We'll invite the family. The family can come up here and take pictures with the board too, if they want to come. All right, we have, the next section is our outstanding administrator. Today we have the outstanding administrator. He is not here, I believe, but we'll read it together. It's Andrew Murphy. He's attentive, understanding, supportive to all staff members. He has shaped our school community into what it is academically, professionally, and socially. I like what he said. It says here, he didn't forget about being in a classroom. He still teaches classes. He's a constant support of all staff. He is a doer. Does not hesitate to make things happen for the good of the school. Let's give it up for Mr. Andrew Murphy, principal at Carver Dual Language. Those are the recognitions we have, but we have a special recognition today, and I'm going to invite Miss Centoria Roulette Jackson and the Jackson County Family Courts Group, and they have a special recognition right now for a special person here today.
Good evening, board. How are you? We're going to kind of stand to the side so our backs won't be to you as we're presenting. So I hope that my voice will project instead of having our back to you, if that's okay. So we're probably... Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? Wonderful. I first want to say thank you to some special people who made this opportunity possible. One, I want to thank Miss Cindy Jackson. I don't know if she's left the room. Where you at? Put your hand up. She's inside. Okay. And then a Lisa Lindbergh. Thank you. We finally get to meet. We were just over email, but I appreciate you for making this happen. On June 3rd, the Jackson County Family Court embarked on a groundbreaking event. It was an event to collaborate with other advocates in the community in regards to resources and how we can support. Thank you. You're always right on time. Hello. It's on? Okay. Where we came together as a community to talk about resources that would support kids and families. And we were hoping that this event would turn out as many people as we could, because we were really trying to get the word out, really trying to collaborate. And as we all know, we work stronger together than we do apart. And it takes a village to support the kids and families and the community that we serve. And so we were very thankful that we had a chance to host that event. However, that event would not have taken place without the support and the kindness and the humility and the guidance and the leadership of a Dr. McNeil. We just so happened when we were talking about the event, he came to Jackson County Family Court, and we were actually talking about another event, of how the resources down at Manual Tech and what was available to the students in the Kansas City, Missouri School District in which we serve. And we were so excited about having that opportunity to connect services. And when he heard what we were doing, he said, absolutely, I can support. We said, wow, you can? He said, absolutely. And so we were able to get things done and host that event. But again, I cannot say enough about the support that he has given. And for me, even though we stand here this evening, it's still not enough. I think I was talking to one of his team members when we were sitting in the lounge, talking about a sense of just a simple state of kindness, right? And how far it goes. And what he did on that day, he doesn't understand. He changed the trajectory of our ability to network and to continue to save and support families. That is huge. And he only did that simple act of kindness to open a corridor for future relationships, for future opportunities. We got an opportunity to have one of our kids come on and be a part of that event, which pretty much stole the event because he talked about his journey through the Jackson County Family Court System, and now he's in college. He's going on to be possibly a Harvard mentor. It was just a wonderful opportunity to hear. But again, none of that would have been possible without Dr. McNeil. And so we were trying to find the right way to honor him today. And so I went to his team. I said, I want to make sure that we get this right. I said, we can give gifts, but it's not enough. I said, I really want to make sure that we knock this out the park. And so his team said, if you have an opportunity, just share what he did with everyone. And if you're able to get on a board meeting to share that, then I think that would be magnificent. What his staff said about him was just truly remarkable. They said that his leadership was unwavering. They said him being the director down at the Manual Tech Center has improved by leaps and bounds under his leadership. They said they've enjoyed working with him every single day that they come in. They just said so many other remarkable things about who he was as a person, and more importantly, who he is as a leader. And that is significant. When you're working with staff, when you're leading strategically and planning, it is important to have a leader at a helm that individuals can absolutely rely on. And so today, we just want to present him with this award. I'm going to allow the other members to at least state their names as they are here with me as part of leadership as well. And these are two dynamic women of their own right that I learn a lot from as well. And then we'll go ahead and present the award to Dr. McNeil.
Good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Jana Foster. I am the Hilltop Mentor Specialist. I connect youth in the community as well as those who are at Hilltop with mentors to help them to continue their journey to become successful.
Good evening. I'm Sonia Potter, Volunteer Coordinator, and I would just like to add to Mrs. Rolette Jackson's comment. Dr. McNeil, you are valued, you are appreciated, and you are loved, a great agape love. Thank you so much for what you do to the community, Jackson County Family Court, and KC Public Schools.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, come over here for a picture. The family court can join here with a picture with Dr. Collier and Board Chair Ms. Rita Cortez. Thank you very much.
Congratulations again to all of the honorees this evening. It's just wonderful to take a moment, pause, and just celebrate our amazing students, our staff, students who do amazing things all year, make great accomplishments, and add so much to the experience here in KCPS, even for us as adults. And then just our staff members who work so hard and who are committed and dedicated in so many ways. Thank you all for all that you do. At this time, we're going to move forward through in the agenda. We're looking at now the superintendent's announcements, and then we'll follow that up with the workshop presentation this evening, our academic year wrap-up. If we can go to the next slide, please. So the first announcement this evening is around our Student Lit Conference. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, just an update on our summer school. We know we're now in our second week, and then we just also want to take a moment, I want to take a moment to respond to public comment. So starting with our KCPS Lit Conference, and that's Leaders in Training Conference. I think you can go to the next slide. The KCPS Lit Conference is created, student-led, student-created, and so we're really proud of our students each year who take the time to plan this. They reach out to the potential speakers. They set up the workshops. They do all of the work to really plan this conference. And I did have an opportunity to go over and to speak, and it was just an awesome experience, just seeing all of the leaders in the room. And we had students that were represented from all of our high schools, and so I was really proud of that as well. There were about 75 students that participated in the conference. There were 21 speakers who volunteered their time to speak and work with our students. Our students also had an opportunity to do team building with the National Guard, as well as a career fair with 10 companies that were present. And they also engaged in a presentation with the Block School to learn about the Launchpad Scholars Program. The keynote presentations that evening were from myself, our board member, Candace Buckner, and Mr. Cornell Ellis. And so we are really just excited and about the experience our students had, and we look forward to them having more of those in the future. This initiative actually began last year with our student interns. This was something that they decided they wanted to do as a project, and so our interns, our students have decided that they want to continue this each year. And so I think that this is a wonderful endeavor, a great way for them to show advocacy and to lend their voice and to show leadership in our school system. They have a lot of ideas about what they want to see happening in KCPS, and so a great experience, and we look forward to engaging our students in the future. The next update is around summer school. As I shared, we are now in our second week of summer school. We kicked off with 4,310 students, and that's not including students that are enrolled in KCVA and some of our other partner sites. There have been several K-8 service learning field trips that have gone very well. They've already been out. I was actually out at summer schools this year, and there were some of the grade levels were out on field trips today. Some of those field trips were Deanna Rose, Science City, Powell Gardens, Anita B. Gorman, and Lakeside Nature Center. And so there are some really good experiences our students are having this summer. The summer school graduation will be on Thursday, July 6th at Manual Technical Center at 11 a.m., and we are expecting 26 graduates. And when I was over at Lincoln Middle today, I had an opportunity to engage with the Alvin Ailey dance program there, and so that was also great to see our middle school and our high school students that are engaging in learning more about dance this summer. And then finally, in the last board meeting on May 12th, there were some concerns that were raised around Central High School removal of the band in the football program, and so we wanted to make sure that we provide some clarification around what is happening at Central. And so in addition to sharing information this evening, we'll also be sharing more of this information with our community at large, just so that everyone has this information. We want to make clear the band program is not being removed from Central High School. We did have a personnel issue this year that caused an interruption. However, we have now hired a new band instructor for the upcoming school year, so band will continue into next school year. Also, the football team was not removed. However, there was a decision to co-op with Southeast High School. A part of the reason for that is that there was a lack of depth on the player roster, just not enough students to go out and to play and to be able to play on both sides. And then there were concerns about students playing on both sides around their safety. And then we also dealt with cancellations because we didn't have enough players. And so we wanted to make sure that our students have a full athletic experience if that's what they're wanting. So that there was a decision made to co-op for those two teams, Southeast and high school. And I want to say this is a temporary solution until we can build up the enrollment and the number of students that are able to play on those teams. So it's not a permanent, long-term. It is an intermediate solution so that our students are not deprived of an opportunity to be a part of the athletic events that they so choose. There was, in terms of our engagement, Central and Southeast conducted player meetings, and from those, they received 100% support from all of the athletes and their families. Surveys were also sent to the community members, and that also showing a majority support. There were several community meetings that were open to the public, and they were held at both schools with representation from parents, players, alumni, and coaches. And all of those folks that were present there were in support as well. On February 3rd, Central and Southeast Players Meeting occurred and community surveys were sent out. On March 9th, that's when the Southeast Community Meeting was held. And then on March 15th, Central Community Meeting was held. The other piece of information I think is important to know, because Central was the only school that was mentioned around this change, but because it's Central and Southeast, we want everyone to know that the Central and Southeast students will play football together on one team under the Southeast High School banner in Southeast High School uniforms for the fall. But in the spring, Central and Southeast players will play baseball together on one team under the Central banner in Central uniforms. So we're making sure that both schools have opportunities to be represented while we're under this temporary model. So hopefully that provides clarification for everyone around what's happening there. And once again, we will share this information publicly to the larger community so that everyone has all of that information, the rationale for those decisions, as well as the engagement that took place that led to that final decision. Okay, at this time, we're ready to move into our workshop presentation. We'll have our academic year wrap-up, and that will be led by Dr. LaTanya Franklin, our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, as well as Mr. David Rand, our Executive Director of Research and Accountability.
All right. Good evening, Board Chair Cortez, Superintendent Collier, Board, Community. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening with my colleague, Dr. LaTanya Franklin, to share some information on our academic year wrap-up. I'm going to share some data slides, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Franklin to share more information about the teaching and learning that occurred this last school year. So as always, we start with our relevant policy. That's Board Policy 1.1 around high-achieving critical thinkers. And as always, in everything we do, it's always applicable for Board Policy 0.0 around equity. To share our big academic goals from Blueprint 2030, we have two goals related to our iReady diagnostic assessment. That's the data that we're going to share with you this evening. And then we have three goals around the state assessment or the Missouri assessment program. For our iReady, we have goals for 2025 and 2030. That is, at the end of third grade, that at least 50% of students will be reading at or above grade level by 2025, increasing that to 70% by 2030. The other one is for our students that are below grade level, that at least 50% of those students will meet their expected growth across the school year on iReady by 2025, increasing to 75% by 2030. Our three goals around the state assessment are in English language arts, math, and science, and that is increasing the percentage of students that are scoring in the top three achievement levels. That's 20% by 2025 for English language arts and math, 25% for science, and then an additional 15% by 2030. Just a little history and previous context. The current state assessment that we have was new as of 2017, 2018. So we don't really compare data past that year because it was a completely different assessment on a different scale. Our iReady assessment that we use, we've been using since school year 2018, 2019. Previous to that, we used the NWEA Measures of Academic Progress. Because of the pandemic, in spring of 2020, there was no state assessment, and we did not take the iReady assessment. That next school year, because we were remote, the iReady assessment, we still administered it, but students took that at home. As we look at trend data from fall and winter, which you're not going to see tonight, but if you ever do see it, you'll see a slight bump in those numbers because students were taking it at home. We're going to share some MAP participation rates with you this evening. The state requirement is to test at least 95% of students. Because of the pandemic in spring of 2021, they reduced that to 85%, which we met, but it's now back to a required testing at least 95% of students. To share a little more information about the state assessment in iReady, the state assessment, the grade level assessment at grades 3 through 8, we administer that in the spring. In English language arts and mathematics, that's given at grades 3 through 8, and at science, it's given at 5 and 8. For our high school students, those tests are end of course exams that are administered based on the coursework that they're completing. You can see a list of them there. New this year, several of our high schools elected to take the English 1 assessment, which we previously had not administered. Our iReady diagnostic, we give that 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. That's given at grades K through 8. Our fall kindergarten we do not administer. The kindergarten students take it iReady for the first time in the winter of kindergarten. The 2 big ways that we report our data for iReady is the percentage of students scoring by tier. That's tier 1, 2, and 3. As you see this data in the next few slides, tier 1 are those students that are reading at or above grade level. Tier 2 are those students that are 1 year below grade level. And tier 3 are those students that are 2 or more years below grade level. The other big thing that we use our iReady assessment for is to remain in compliance with what is transitioning from Senate Bill 319 to Senate Bill 681. That is, for Senate Bill 681, new this fall, any student on the iReady assessment that's 1 or more years below grade level will be required to have an individualized reading success plan. Under Senate Bill 319, that was just focused on our 4th grade students, and there's also some changes to, under Senate Bill 319, there were certain requirements for retention. Under Senate Bill 681, any retention would take place in consult with the family. It would not be strictly a district decision or driven by the legislature. For our state assessment, we do not have any results yet. As you'll see on a later slide, it's one of the things that's frustrating is for several reasons. One, we really like to be able to share those results with families, and not be able to get those scores before the end of the school year makes it more difficult to get those in the hands of our families. The other thing is in July is the first time that we'll actually be able to see some of our individual student results, and we can actually use that data to project what our official results will be. But the data that's really most important is the data that relates to the standards that are measured on the assessment. And we do not get the official download for that until September. The beginning of September was last year, and that makes it incredibly difficult to use that information to go back to our curriculum and look at what we may need to look at or adjust. What you're seeing here is our participation rates. Again, we were required to test 95% of students. In both math and science, we tested about 99%. Our English language arts is right at 97%, but that will be closer to 99% because our English language learner students that have been in the country for 12 months or less are not required to test, and they have not been removed from those scores. The other thing to note is that KCVA, our virtual academy, requires our students to take the state assessment, and they always do a really, really good job of getting our students in to test. As we transition to our iReady data, what you're seeing here is our fall to spring percentage of students by tier in reading and math. As you can see, we made some really good movement in the percentage of students scoring at tier 1, or those students that are at grade level, as well as decreasing the percentage of students scoring at tier 3. Even though this is not the easiest to see, this is just kind of representative of how we like to report our data on a regular basis. Not only do we present the district totals, break it down by grade level, but we also break it down by gender, ethnicity, English language learner status, as well as exceptional ed. As you can see, what this note right here shows is that this is only including students that have a valid pre and post test. All that means is that we include any student that completes the assessment. On the iReady, there are things that are called rush flags. You can either get a yellow or a red that signals that a student is clicking through really, really quickly, and we do not remove those results from the overall scores. We still include those. Overall, when we look at the students that took both the pre and the post, if you look at all the students that tested in spring, about 83% of those students took both the fall and the spring assessment. Next, we're transitioning to a year-over-year trend in terms of spring by tier. The red is the percentage of students that are 2 or more years below grade level, the yellow 1 year below grade level, and the green are those students that are at grade level. You can see over the last 3 springs, we're seeing some movement in that data, but it's still not where we would want it to be. If you looked at all of the students, regardless of whether they took the pretest, regardless of whether they came in March, April, you see about 3% less in Tier 1 and about 3% more in Tier 3. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. LaTanya Franklin to share the wonderful things that went on in teaching and learning this school year.
Thank you, and good evening. Yes, we did have a lot of wonderful things occurring this school year. And just a reminder, our focus, as was shared at the beginning of the year, was really to make sure that we were addressing unfinished learning. We knew that this was a priority that needed to happen. Years after the pandemic, we're still focused on making sure that we can fill in any gaps that may exist. And we were doing that by really accelerating learning. And I spoke about that at the beginning of the year, meaning that we wanted to ensure that all of our students had access to grade level instruction, Tier 1, and access to grade level materials as their Tier 1 instruction, and then filling in gaps behind that by supplementing wherever we saw that there was a need. So it was really about staying true to ensuring that Tier 1 instruction did not become an intervention or a supplement, but it stayed on grade level and remained rigorous. In addition to the acceleration of learning, we also targeted our big rocks. And so specifically, I will talk about our math, our literacy, and our culturally responsive teaching big rocks. All right, so here's a quick overview of our targeted areas this year, what we really focused on. So we had district-wide implementation. All across the district, we were focused on literacy, close reading, using academic language and vocabulary. We were also focused on specific math strategies, math stories, reading and writing, and mathematics. And so we wanted to see reading and writing really occurring across all of our content areas, and also that focus on academic language across all of our content areas. We also focused on professional development, so that's our reading and our math endorsements. That's all the professional development that our teachers participated in this year, our letters training, our 3Ls, and our numbers training. And you can see some details listed about those specific trainings. And then finally, our culturally responsive teaching practices. Again, we focused on our district book study that we've been talking about quite a bit this year. We've had our culturally responsive coaching for our instructional coaches, which that was something that was incorporated a little later in the year. We saw that there was also a need to ensure that our instructional coaches were getting a level of support so that they could better support our classroom teachers. And then, of course, our culturally responsive library sets in all of our K-6 classrooms. So the key performance indicators that we wanted to focus on this year, and these were also shared at the beginning of the year, was to really see an increase in student performance. That was the number one goal. We always want to know that what we're doing is actually having an impact on student achievement. We also wanted to make sure that our teachers were able to use that data to have some effective conversations about professional learning have some effective conversations about the teaching and learning that needed to happen in the classroom as a result of analyzing the data. And then finally, we wanted to hear feedback from our teachers and staff. We really wanted to make sure that they felt like the professional development was relevant and effective, and was something that they felt was benefiting them as teachers in front of our students each day. So some of the successes, and Mr. Rand already touched on some of these, but I wanted to take a moment just to highlight some of the increases that we've seen, because I don't want to skim past this. This is really important to note that we were nearly at 20% in the increase that we saw in our students on our reading diagnostic scores, but also we saw a significant decrease in the number of students performing in that tier 3. These are the students that are performing at least 2 or more grade levels below, which is really what we want to see. We want to see some movement on both ends. Increase in students performing at or above grade level, but also a decrease in students performing in that lowest tier. Same is true for math, that we see an even bigger increase in students performing at or above grade level from the fall to the spring. And again, we saw quite a significant decrease in the students that were performing in that third tier, 2 or more grade levels below. I also wanted to highlight that Mr. Rand also mentioned that increase from spring to spring, because that's always what we're looking at. We not only want to see growth throughout the year, but we also want to see that we are having some progress being made from year to year, and that is very difficult sometimes to see. And what we know with our iReady is that on average we should see between 2 and 3%. There's sometimes you may see a little bit more, and we took a little dive into some of that data, and we could see that we had quite a few grade levels that were performing really close to the district average or above the district average. So it wasn't as if we had 1 or 2 grade levels that were really pushing the scores up. We really had about 6 grade levels that really contributed to our overall average, which is really important, because what that says is, A, we should see this reflected in our MAP scores, is what we're hoping for, but also we hope to see that this is sustained over time, that students are starting in the fall performing at a higher level. And then the next group that we wanted to focus on is our third graders. We know that that is a pivotal grade, and we always want to monitor what reading proficiency looks like for our third graders. And as you can see, our third graders had some pretty significant increases in their performance as well. But then look at the number of students that came out of that tier 3, 24.2%, which is really significant, one of the highest percentages that we saw, which I wanted to highlight that because that's not very typical for third grade. Sometimes we look at our third grade and we're looking at how we can better support, because it tends to be a grade level where they're struggling to make a transition. So again, and as Mr. Rand stated, I don't want to inflate, because we know that there's obviously more work to do, but I also think it's important to acknowledge when we see growth like this, particularly if we haven't really seen it in a little bit of time. So we do want to make note of that. And then finally, our Senate Bill 319, again, some of our readers who are struggling in terms of being on grade levels, so just needing additional support. We saw at least 145 students out of the 322 that exited that status. So again, students making progress, and our goal is to ensure that that proficiency is a mastery of skills and that we don't see a decline moving forward. So almost 50% of the students transitioned out. So some successes with our professional learning. So we just pulled some comments, just a few comments from teachers. And yes, a lot of the comments that I'm sharing today are related to what's working well, because I am highlighting successes. I will take an opportunity to also layer in some things that we had to take into account, some lessons learned and things that we will do differently as a result of the feedback that we received. I would say that most of this feedback from teachers as it pertains to letters was very positive. I don't know that I've heard any teacher talk about letters in a sense that it wasn't beneficial or meaningful. But I will say that one of the things that we did hear from teachers was how we were providing the professional development and if more teachers could participate. For example, we had a school and there were only 3 teachers who were engaged. It was very difficult for the principal and the teachers to really have conversations about the learning. And in fact, it's really difficult if teachers haven't been trained to implement that learning across a grade level or immerse it into the building. So that was one of the things that we did hear back from teachers related to that. But really, if you look at some of those comments, even one teacher said that if all teachers had this training, we would see an impact, and if all teachers were using the same consistent language, this was something they would like to see. And then as it pertains to our numbers training, again, we were asking teachers to just share their thoughts and experiences. And again, I'll just highlight a lot of the positive comments they really enjoyed. It's very effective training. I actually sat through a couple of the sessions myself and principals as well, and they also provided positive feedback. So we know that it is effective in engaging professional learning. But I included this last comment about the case study. So just layering in some opportunities to address some things that came up. And I included this one because the case studies did come up quite a bit, and they were just extra steps that teachers had to take in order to complete the training. So I'm just really pleased to share that this year we've structured the professional development because it's being done throughout the workday. They won't have to engage in the case study work. Everything that they need to do will be embedded within the professional learning, so there's no extra activity or assignment to do. And that came up quite a bit, so I wanted to include that and just share that we did make that adjustment. And then success is related to the culturally responsive teaching practices. We did this book study, and it was a huge endeavor, and there are still comments and people talking about it. So it was a big deal, and we're really proud of how successful it was. Over 230 sessions held throughout the district. 80% of the teachers found the sessions to be effective or very effective. Also, our coaches in their professional learning, all of the coaches felt like the professional development that they were receiving was something that they would be able to implement in their schools and found it to be beneficial. And then finally, just wanted to highlight a little feedback from the equity audit, and we heard this in the previous presentation around some of the curriculum being very equitable and culturally responsive to our students, specifically highlighting our ELA curriculum and our fine arts curriculum. So I definitely wanted to note that. And in fact, we had a conversation about that with our CIPD team and wanted to work more collaboratively so other content areas could learn more about what they could do to make other content areas more culturally responsive for our students. So very excited about that, but the team was ready to hit the ground and start moving forward. And I said, hold on a second, we'll get to that next year. We're getting there. But I was glad to see that they were excited about that. And then just some feedback, again, positive feedback from teachers about the professional development. But there were some questions and some wonderings from teachers as well. Primarily, what happens next? Where are we going from here? And which is the question, where are we going from here? We've completed the book study. What is the next step? And so I'll share a little more about that. But again, I was really pleased to see that a vast majority of the teachers felt like the culturally responsive teaching practices sessions were very effective, and several teachers gave comments about the effectiveness of their leadership team to provide that professional development, which I thought was really nice. So basically, the principals and the lead teams did an excellent job with turnkeying that information back to their staff. And then another success, so our Beyond the Four Walls, as you know, is one of the priorities that is aligned to the academic goals that Mr. Rand mentioned previously. And again, we want all of our students to have at least 2 real-world learning experiences, and these experiences are aligned to the grade level curriculum. So we have it all mapped out, what grade level will go where and what that looks like. And we had 5,877 students that participated just with the Beyond the Four Walls. That does not include other field trips that were scheduled just at the building level. So we really are prioritizing our students being out and having these different experiences. And of course, as you can see, one of the highlight experiences was taking close to 50, not me, but close to 50 seniors to New York. I did not volunteer for that one, but we did have some brave adults that said, hey, I will take that on gladly. I would love for our kids to have this experience. And so a couple of other pictures there are students who are at the Biz Town, which is a big deal. I think it used to be called Exchange City back in the day. So, but just, I mean, it's such a joy to see. A lot of these pictures are posted on social media. Our coordinators are also attending those field trips to capture some of that experience and learning for our students. So this is a great endeavor. I say we're about 40% in, so we still have quite a ways to go, but we can see that in the next couple of years, we will have been able to say that all of our students had at least 2 experiences. So we are able to see how many students have gone and how many students are remaining to have 2 experiences or just 1 experience. And not that we would stop there, but we want to make sure we at least do the 2. And then just some of the challenges. I mean, of course, the challenge that everyone is still dealing with is just staff shortages, and not just with teaching. I think there's probably staff shortages everywhere. But I will say that there's been a concerted effort to really address that as best we can. We know that when teachers are not in the classroom, that is just an issue that we try to avoid as much as possible. So I feel like as a district, we really worked on trying to ensure that we have someone who is available to cover in classrooms if teachers have to be out. And then, as Mr. Rand mentioned, just some of the challenges with receiving state data, that sort of thing, and changes in legislation and practices with MSIP 6. And so with all of the things that occurred this year, there were some lessons learned, and all of that information was put into place so that we could start planning for the future. And so one of the things that we really focused on for next year is the expansion of our reading endorsement. As I mentioned earlier, wanting to make sure as many of our primary grade teachers as possible had access to this instruction. If we're really trying to have an impact on literacy, we really need to make sure that all of our teachers have the foundational skills to teach reading. And so this year we had about 49 teachers that participated. And in addition to that, we had about 58 other staff members that participated in letters. And so what we wanted to do is really target our kindergarten, first, and second grade teachers, who are really the teachers of reading, and get all of our teachers trained. And so that's the commitment we made for next year. So we will have close to 150 teachers who will participate in letters training next year. And I just have to add that was quite an undertaking to get done, but we did receive acknowledgement from DESE. I did receive that information from RPDC, that we were one of few districts that really took this initiative on to really show our commitment to ensuring that we wanted to have an impact on student achievement in terms of literacy. So I'm really excited about that. And then 3L's training, again, just really trying to expand professional development. These are our targeted initiatives, so we want to make sure as many teachers as possible have access and engagement. And again, we'll continue with our targeted literacy strategies. Same with our math endorsement, the expansion of providing this training to more teachers. And so teachers who are not participating in letters would participate in numbers and letters. And so we would have district PD for all of our teachers, and just really having some continuity across the district around the teaching and learning focus area, but also the professional development that teachers are receiving. And then again, just some other future planning steps. Mr. Rand mentioned Senate Bill 681, our reading plans. We know that will have a significant impact on reading for our students. Again, our literacy interventionists also aligned to our academic goals. We'll have a new math adoption next year. Our teachers were very, very excited about that. We'll continue with our high dosage tutoring, and then we'll continue with our literacy and math tier 2 consultant support. And then finally, future planning for our culturally responsive teaching practices. As I mentioned, teachers were asking what's next? What are we doing next? We're excited that we were actually able to secure Zaretta Hammond. I know that was not an easy thing to do, but wow, that's fantastic that she will be our keynote speaker for our Professional Learning Institute. And it's a great segue from the first year of doing that book study. But then also we wanted to focus on pushing our culturally responsive teaching practices into the classroom. So now that we've done our book study, what does this look like in terms of classroom implementation? And so we will do an intense focus on the Ready for Rigor framework, which is a part of the book. So it's not like teachers are looking somewhere else to get the information. We're continuing the learning. We've gotten that foundation. Now we're building on top of that. So that's really what the CIPD team will focus on, and helping teachers immerse that into the classroom. And then finally, we will spend some time working with the equity department on the implementation of our culturally responsive sustaining education plan. So really pushing the work forward and really targeting other instructional areas, but also other areas within the district, so not just instruction. I said finally, but I'm not quite done yet. So I can't possibly pass this up. So again, other future planning related to our instrumental music expansion, because this is a really big deal, and our STEAM innovative instructional technology initiatives too. So as you may know, we're starting our instrumental music expansion next year. And just some highlights there that we're offering instrumental music at 12 of our elementary sites. We started with 2 schools this year, and we're expanding, adding 10 additional schools. And then our innovative instructional technology initiative, where we have several schools that will receive the Apple iPads, and I have the schools listed there. Students will be one-to-one, have some opportunities for some STEAM learning. And then we have the Verizon Learning Schools, who will also engage in an immersion into some technology-based instruction, and students will also be one-to-one with their devices. So I know that's a lot, but we are excited about everything that's coming forward, and I will turn it over for any questions you might have.
Dr. Franklin and Mr. Rand, thank you for walking us through the presentation, and congratulations on the trajectory to the whole team, right? That's a district-wide effort, and we're grateful for that. I'm going to start to my right and go board member by board member. We could maybe limit ourselves to 3 questions max, just so we can move through in round 1. And then if there are any follow-ups, we'll do that. Fair? I'm going to start with Ms. Curls. You can pass. Ms. Buckner.
Yes. This is just, I have a comment and a question. So the comment is, when we give feedback, when we share feedback, teacher feedback, I would really appreciate quantitative data from surveys. I do appreciate the quotes, but I would love to see how teachers are responding to the professional development. So that, just for future reference, I would love that data. And then the question is, on slide 23, we're looking at our current status on iReady. There's a chart. I don't know what I'm looking at, and so I know you kind of talk through it, but if you could attempt to like narrate it one more time for me, because I don't know what I'm looking at, and then if I have any other questions, I'll follow up via email.
Okay, yeah, for sure. And I didn't really explain it at all, so it's not surprising that.
Okay.
Yes. So what we're seeing here is for reading and mathematics, you are seeing the total number of students that took both the pre and the post test. And then you're seeing the percentage of students on the pre and post test for tier 1 and tier 3, and then the change from the pre and the post. And so pre-tier 1, post-tier 1, those are those students that are on grade level. And then the tier 1 change is the progress from the pre to the post. And then same thing with Tier 3, and those are our students that are 2 or more years below grade level. And you'll see that by grade, as well as by gender, ethnicity, and then our English language learner status, or LEP, limited English proficiency, as well as our special education and general education students.
Thank you. So if I'm looking at this chart, at which grade level would we say is, which grade levels would we say are the most cause for concern?
I would say probably our middle schools, our 7th and our 8th grade. As you see, as the grade levels go higher, you're seeing less movement from the pre to the post test, and that's what we're really wanting to see. In reading, if you see 6, 7, and 8, those are the 3 grade levels that are less than 10% growth. So I think that's definitely an area that we would want to look at. And then in math, kind of similar, but more at 7 and 8, where you're just not seeing the growth in the percentage of students on grade level. So I would say our middle school students would be the ones.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ford?
Question, going back to the goals slide. So I know we are still waiting on MAP scores, and that's always the case. So when we get those MAP scores, then we will be able to kind of clearly see by goal, here's the goal, this is our current standing. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
and
correct.
We'll be able to see a side of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and what I forgot to mention is for our iReady goals, for that goal 1A1 for our
Yes.
3rd graders on grade level, we're currently at 36.3%,
Okay.
Which is short of that 50%. In looking at our below grade level students that met their growth goals, it was 50% in reading and 47% in math. And then previously, the board has received our state assessment results when they've become official and released by the state. We've gotten clarification from the state that as soon as we're able to get our student scores and project what they're going to be, we can share them with the board under embargo, which means we can share them with you all, but you just can't share them with anybody else. And we can't share them publicly.
Okay, got it. My next question, this might be a Dr. Collier question, and this could be my total ignorance. So I know we run into this challenge every year of waiting on the MAP scores. What are we currently doing, or have we done, to be able to address that concern with the state that I know is just not a KCPS situation?
Yeah, I mean, we share, I'm on, I was actually just at a meeting today with the advisory committee for MSIP 6. It's something that is common, that everybody is sharing it with the state. That especially that data that shows how our students performed in certain strands and specific standards, that's the data that's really actionable, right? Because we can know from iReady pretty much the percentage of students that are on grade level. iReady does a good job of predicting MAP, so we know where our students are. It's which skills, which questions that our students do well on, which do they struggle on, and do we see trends district-wide that may have us go back to our curriculum and look at something there. But we let them know. They just don't really listen very well.
I would just say the only thing that we have to be able to plan from is our iReady data, because we don't have MAP data. And so we do review that, just as you saw, the growth over the year, how our students are performing at the end of the year, to give us an indication of, areas where you could, because on the iReady, it does break it down by domains for reading and math. So that gives us an indication of how our students are performing across the district in each of those domain areas. And depending on what we see, we do make plans around that. So like when you see in the academic plan, the strategies that were selected for this year, we didn't just pick something out of the air for those strategies. Those were aligned with what we were seeing around student performance in the iReady test. Those domains where we saw our students were not performing as well around vocabulary, language acquisition. So we made sure we selected a strategy, district-wide strategy around that. And then the other two domains where our students have consistently not performed well are two domains around comprehension, which is why we then selected the close reading strategy as our district-wide. So it is limited when we don't have our MAP data that breaks it down by each of those different standards. But what we do use is what we can gather from that iReady data that we have at the end of every school year.
Okay, I think this is a quick, and I should probably know the answer to this. The students that don't exit Senate Bill 319, what happens to them in terms of the support they receive or not?
So they are supposed to go to summer school, and they test again at the end of summer school. And if they are still not meeting the minimum score, then those students are retained. That's the big change with Senate Bill 681, is that at the end of the year, if a student still isn't meeting the target and they're still below grade level, there's no requirement for retention. What the language in the law says is that that's a decision that we must make in cooperation with the family.
Ms. Kendricks?
I have questions today. All right, so we're on the slide that I needed. When you were given the data, I'm a data girl, so thank you, I appreciate that. But looking at the goals, were these goals that were set up as a part of our previous strategic planning?
No,
These were ones we set this year?
These are new ones that we set as part of the Blueprint 2030 going along with the strategies.
So my question is, do we know how much we need to increase each year, our students would need to increase each year from the time we set that goal to reach this goal in 2025 and 2030, like goal 1A1? And if we do know that, have we ever actually met that mark? And do we look like we're on track to be able to actually attain these goals?
So right now, 1A1, we're at 36.3%. We have 2 years till the spring of 2025, which means that we would have to grow about 7% a year for third grade. And currently, we're a ways away from that. That is.
Have we ever attained 7% a year with third grade?
Year over year? No.
Okay. So when I'm asking about that, because when I looked at the goal, I was like, that's a lofty goal. And I like to have goals that I feel like I can achieve, because if it's a really big one, then when I don't achieve it, it's like, well, I didn't think I could get there anyway, but I got kind of close. So when you give this presentation the next time, can we have that like broken down so we can see like what we would need to have in order to get there? And is this something that we really can do, or do we need to adjust? Because 50% is a lot, considering where we started from. And I'm fine with 5% a year or 3% a year, whatever is reasonable for us, if we can make that sustainable.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And that's always the challenge, right? I mean, do you set a goal so you can meet it, or do you set a goal so that you have something to shoot for? And even if you fall short, if you're still making good growth, that's still something to celebrate. And that's something we struggle with every time we set the goals. So your point is very well taken.
Last question, and it's kind of like combined for three. I like to know that what we are doing is actually producing the result that we expect. So we had some information about the math and reading endorsements we're getting, about the culturally responsive professional development for coaches, and about implementing, the culturally responsive things into the classroom, because we started out with like getting that focus. So I want to know, with those trainings, what do we expect to see happening in our classrooms or in our buildings or at the district level that would show us that the trainings were actually having the impact that we wanted them to have?
That's a great question. And so the benefit to having the professional development structured the way that it is, where all of the teachers are engaging in the professional learning, is that now we have opportunities for discussions and collaboration, and we can look at what's occurring in classrooms across grade levels. Whereas before we had to maybe spot check a little bit in different spaces, and now we can establish like this is what we should see occurring across the whole grade level in all of our schools. So we're able to really determine what that is. The other benefit to doing that is to talk about what are those look-fors going to be, what will monitoring look like. So we're really just starting kind of at this level to determine with the professional development, what should we be seeing in classrooms? What does this look like, and how will we monitor that? So it's kind of happening simultaneously. It's not that we have it first, but as we're going through the training, we really want that to surface. okay, so now we know this is what it should look like in the classroom. Then we developed a monitoring tool for doing that. But first, we really need to start the training. A vast majority of our teachers will start the first year of training, letters training, for example, and that's a 2-year training. So it is a time commitment. It's not something where we want to overwhelm teachers necessarily as they're learning, and then here we are saying all of this needs to be implemented right away, and that's really not the intent. They will be learning as they're receiving the professional development, because components of the PD they have to do with students in the classroom. So that's what we would be looking at and looking for. They're learning and then applying the learning simultaneously. So that's really, really key.
Thank you. So my understanding of what you just said to me is right now, or when we first started this, we didn't come in with, okay, this is what we want to see in the classroom as a result of this training. But once we do the training and we get some feedback, then we understand what it is it would look like when it's implemented, whether it's in the classroom, building level, district level, whatever. And so does that mean that the next time we get some information about what's going on with this, that we should have some criteria that you were looking at as to has this actually had the impact? So then I can have my data.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackaway.
First of all, I just want to commend you on leveraging letters and numbers. I know that these are pretty cutting edge and things that have had huge impact nationwide as they've been rolled out. I'm curious on some of the constraints that might be present there. You're smiling as I'm asking that. Could you talk to me a little bit about what would hold us back from being able to kind of, even like on numbers, for instance, I see that, you know, training for 3rd through 5th and 6th through 8. Obviously, we'd love to get that further integrated into our classrooms. Could you talk maybe a little bit about those constraints and then what obstacles, what you're working to overcome those obstacles?
Yes, I did smile just a little bit. Just planning professional development district-wide, it is a challenge because every stakeholder wants something. So we're really trying to give a little bit to everyone and still meeting some of the requirements that we know we have to follow. But really what we tried to do was prioritize literacy. And I feel like a vast majority of our teachers, our administrators, even if they were giving up some time, felt like this is the priority. And so, yes, I understand why we're devoting this much time and effort. And really, they were really excited that more of their teachers would receive the training. Now, I don't want to say that they didn't want to have more time with teachers, because that is true. We all want more time with the teachers, but I will say overwhelmingly the principals and staff understood why we needed to make this district-focused PD, letters, numbers, and 3Ls a priority. If we're saying it's a priority, then how do we demonstrate that? And that means we really make sure that everyone is receiving it. And so the way it's structured is we started with K2, they have letters, and then we worked with the rest of the grade levels, and they were assigned to other trainings. And then we just have to look at different groups. If they've already received a particular training, we place them in a different training. So it's quite a act of that we're, I mean, hey, it's an acrobatic act, I should say, but we feel pretty confident about the number of teachers that will receive the trainings and how we'll structure it moving forward.
So I have to constrain myself to 3 as well. No, I'm just joking. My first one is really more of a kind of a policy strategy question for Mr. Rand, which is the timeliness of the data and the completeness of the data from the state is something that any of us who've been up here for more than a hot minute have been hearing about cyclically, right? What's your sense, what's your diagnosis of their barriers? And if we were to define what our optimal schedule would be to get that data back, what would it look like? I mean, I'm basically asking you to help us become advocates as well.
So one of the main barriers is that there's open-ended questions as well as some writing prompts at certain grade levels that have to be hand graded. If it was all machine scorable, and a little shorter that would allow them to turn around the results a lot quicker. But it's really those questions that have to be graded by humans that causes the delay in the scores. But we do, even then, we do get the initial student scores in July, and they still don't release the official ones until November. But what we're able to do is replicate how they calculate the official scores. Again, removing those ELL students that have been in the country less than 12 months, or MAP alternate students that take an alternate assessment. We're able to actually project what those official results are going to be and have those in late July and early August. And the big difference is we hadn't been sharing that with the board until the embargo was lifted, but that's stuff that we will be able to share with you, just not publicly.
I think my question is more about getting the data for the district that is actionable. And how do, so I hear in that that there has to be a better strategy around open-ended questions. But what's the barrier to the release of standards-based data for things that are scored through an OCR system or through the scanned system?
That would be something we could request, like a partial release of at least the stuff that's scored when it is. I mean, to be honest, they're just slow on a lot of different things as it comes to data and getting data posted and data released.
In their conversations with you and your colleagues across the state, do they seek out solutions?
I think they're struggling to just maintain. They really struggle with capacity, with having high quality people on their data teams. I'm not saying anything bad about the people that are there, but yes.
Right, no, I mean, I think, part of this is we all interface with different players in the system, and for us to be equipped to advocate for solutions that help us do our work with our students better. And I think, I'm not even sure of all the right questions to ask, but I would encourage you as you speak with your colleagues and attend these meetings, if there are places where advocacy, whether it's through the State School Board Association, through our legislators, through whatever parties are appropriate, let's try to think about how we push the system forward.
Yeah, for sure.
So, my second question is, and I need my glasses to read my handwriting, sorry. In terms of the letters, so now this is a Dr. Franklin question, kind of both, actually. As you think about the first year of training in letters and 3Ls and numbers, but in particular, I'm guessing letters and numbers, is there any evidence in the early data to show different rates of progression in the classrooms where teachers have that training?
If I have to be honest, I would say most of what we see is just in the teacher's knowledge and understanding, more so than actual change in practice in that first year. It really is about teaching teachers about the science of reading. And I think sometimes maybe there's not enough time devoted to that so that teachers can gain a sound foundational understanding. And in some instances, there's a shift in their learning, things that they've learned previously. Now they're learning something new about how to teach reading. And so I do think the way the training is structured, a 2-year training, it really requires that. And I think for us to be understanding of that learning that needs to occur in that first year, it's really foundational. Not that they're not doing things in the classroom. So there are a few strategies that they are supposed to implement with students. They come back to the training, share that information. There's assignments that they complete. So there's work that they're doing. It's just not necessarily work that we're giving them to do or things that we're doing to them per se, not necessarily to, but I will say it that way. We really are wanting them to engage in the work, because what we will see happening is they will start implementing based on what they're learning throughout that first year. So it is built that way. It's embedded so that they will then apply the learning, come back, and talk about that as a group at their next session.
Thank you. So Don't be so impatient is the tagline there, right? That's fair. That's fair, right? From a board perspective, right? So
I
it
will
takes
say
time.
what we would want to see is that teachers are actually applying the learning. So to simply state that there is learning that's occurring, but they have to do it with students. So we should see that occurring in all of those classrooms.
Thank you. And my last question relates to it. This is a question I've heard from folks outside the district as we talk about all of our different interventions for students who are 2 or more grade levels behind. What tools do we use, or how do we evaluate the different interventions to either A, know it's effective, and B, know which intervention to apply for which student?
Well, I'll let her speak, but I can tell you right now we're in the middle of a program evaluation of the interventionists. They came and did site visits, interviews, observations, and as soon as we get our state assessment data, we've given them our year-end iReady data. They're going to use that to judge the effectiveness of the program. So we've contracted with a company to do several different program evaluations, and the reading, math, and academic interventionists are one of those that we're evaluating.
I would just add, we can really simply categorize the interventions that are being provided. So we have interventions that will occur in the classroom or in the school. Then you have interventions that occur after school, which would be your tutoring. And then you have intervention supports that really are focused around supporting teachers. So they serve multiple purposes. So we may have a consultant. The consultant is primarily working with teachers to help structure small groups or how to look at the data. So that too is an intervention. It's a support. The interventionists that come in and support students or pull out a group of students, that's one level. And then you have intervention support that is provided in the classroom as a part of instruction, differentiating the instruction for the students, maybe having a small group pulled off to the side or some personalized learning. So it sounds like a lot, but it's really being used in a way where there's multiple opportunities for intervention to occur, so multiple students can actually have access to interventions.
So I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have any follow-up questions. Ms. Curls, who reserved her right to ask questions.
Yeah. So I had that same question around what those additional supports look like, so I'm glad you asked that. I also was wondering about, as we're teaching the letters and numbers, teaching strategies, is the curriculum that we're using in the classroom supportive of them? Is it designed to work with those teaching systems?
Absolutely. And what's important is that the curriculum coordinators also participate in letters training, so they know all of that information. They were a part of the earlier groups. And so it just would not make sense if that wasn't happening, and we would hear from teachers. But what we're finding is that they're actually making connections and seeing why we're doing certain things in the curriculum and how it aligns to the training that's being provided. So it really is serving that purpose. And again, some of it is unlearning. Once you're learning more about the science of reading and how to actually teach reading, you can see some of the same strategies that they're learning already embedded in the curriculum. And I can say that with a level of certainty because I did have a conversation with the coordinators about just that when I first started. So they were really sharing that information with me. So that's a great question.
So it sounds like the curriculum came first, and now they're being taught better strategies to teach that curriculum that supports that system.
Yes, so it was built into the curriculum. The state initiative is really focused on literacy and making sure that all of our teachers understand the science of reading. And so now that teachers are participating in the training, they're really understanding the connection and seeing why certain things have already been embedded in the curriculum.
All right, thank you. That was my only question.
Thank you so much for your time and your patience. Appreciate it. With that, Dr. Collier, does that conclude your report?
That does conclude my report this evening. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. 1 second, I have to follow my script. So the next item on our agenda relates to the Board of Equalization appointment. The proposed resolution, based on our interviews, is a motion to appoint Mr. Howard Townsend to represent Kansas City Public Schools' interest in the Board of Equalization. We will seek to appoint an alternate at a later time as we continue solicitation. So with that, is there a motion to appoint Mr. Howard Townsend as representative to the Board of Equalization?
So moved.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this motion?
About the alternate, what is gonna, I mean, I guess that's not part of this motion, but I was curious what the process would be. Are we just gonna open it up again? Because I have someone who's actually interested, and I told them, well, hold off, I don't know what to do.
So I think we'll extend that solicitation, so
Okay,
I would have them submit their information because it is a time-sensitive
yes,
matter, so,
okay.
thank you. Any other questions or comments? With that, Lisa, please call the roll.
Ms. Buckner,
Yes.
Ms. Curls,
Yes,
Ms. Ford,
Yes.
Mr. Jackaway.
I'm going to abstain since I was not a part of that conversation.
Okay. Ms. Kendricks,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez.
Yes. The motion passes. I'm going to, for a moment, just add, for the public and for those of you who are here at the meeting, the representative to the Board of Equalization serves as Kansas City Public Schools representative in the appeals process related to property valuations within our boundaries. His role is to serve as an advisor to the members of the Board of Equalization, and along with all of the other taxing jurisdictions, and in that role, ensure that taxpayers receive a fair and appropriate valuation, which is our objective as well. So, thank you for raising that. So with that, Lisa, are there any outstanding action items?
We had quite a few questions and answers today, but as of right now, I don't have any. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to address or for me to bring back for another time? Okay. As of right now, no. There aren't any. Thank you.
Excellent. Items for the June 28th, 2023 business meeting. The chair recognizes Dr. Collier to introduce the business items for our next business meeting. Slide.
Okay. At this time, we have 9 items for our June 28th business meeting. The first is the Amendment 2 of the fiscal year 23 budget, then fiscal year 24 budget adoption. Third, Martin Brothers at $5 million, Belafontaine $1.1 million, CC Produce $300,000, KC Cold Storage $250,000, McGraw-Hill $900,000, District Insurance Policies, and then finally engagement on approval of demolition of King Weeks, Fairview, and 6th Grade Center.
Thank you, Dr. Collier. With that, meeting is adjourned.